Promoter Eddie Hearn has said that he has removed Ohara Davies from fighting on the undercard of the Lawrence Okolie Isaac Chamberlain bill in February. And according to Sonny Edwards, who's a professional boxer promoted by Frank Warren, Davis has also now been dropped by his trainer, Tony Sims, and his manager, Charlie Sims. And this has all come about because of some comments that Ohara Davies made on social media in support of the Sun newspaper. He was trying to goad one of his rivals, Tommy Coyle, into fighting him. And he talked about his love and support for the Sun newspaper. Now, this has been taken by the people of Liverpool to be an insult to them, because they believe that Ohara Davies is basically implying that he supports the Sun newspaper's coverage of the Hillsborough disaster. For those of you who don't know, the Hillsborough disaster was an incident that took place in the late 80s. I remember it. I'm old enough to remember it. It was all over the news at the time. It was a very, very big deal. It was an incident in the late 80s which took place in the city of Sheffield in the UK at the Hillsborough football ground. And a bunch of Liverpool fans, I think it was like 90 of them or something, were crushed to death in a big crush that happened in the stands. And the media coverage by the Sun at the time was very critical of the Liverpool fans and defended the police. Decades later, after campaigns and inquiries and what have you, the police eventually admitted culpability for a lot of the deaths and whatnot. And the Sun newspaper also apologized, I believe, eventually for the way they covered it. But because of that tragedy, the city of Liverpool has long held the Sun newspaper in very low regard because of what happened there. Now, I saw a couple of these social media posts by Ohara Davies where he's talking about his support for the Sun and goading Tommy Coyle. I don't understand how this has been linked to Hillsborough though. I'm not saying it hasn't been. I haven't seen where it's been linked to Hillsborough, because he was talking to Tommy Coyle. Tommy Coyle's not from Liverpool. He's from Hull. And Tommy Coyle he had his name dragged through the mud basically by the Sun newspaper because there was some kind of crime that was committed, a robbery or an assault or something like that, which was committed by a guy who used to train at Tommy Coyle's gym. This is what the Sun newspaper reported. And they needlessly attached Tommy Coyle's name to the story when he didn't have anything to do with the crime that was committed. But just because this guy used to train at his gym, they attached Tommy Coyle's name to the story. And so because of that, Tommy Coyle didn't like the Sun newspaper, or don't like the Sun newspaper. So when Ohara Davies is coming out talking about the Sun, why are people from Liverpool thinking it's got anything to do with Ohara, suggesting that it's to do with the Hillsborough situation? I don't know. I mean, clearly people are upset. Eddie Hearn has removed him from the show in February. His management and trainer have apparently dropped him, and there have been several fighters from Liverpool who have come out and expressed their disgust at Ohara Davies's comments, like Tony Bellew and Liam Smith. So clearly there's some kind of connection to the Hillsborough situation, but I can't find it in the social media posts that I've seen from Ohara Davies. So I don't know, maybe somebody can enlighten me and explain to me where the Hillsborough connection is. Again, I know the relationship between Hillsborough and the Sun, right, very, very well. But where in Ohara Davies's social media posts did he insinuate that he was talking about Liverpool when he was speaking of his support for the Sun newspaper? Wasn't it a dig at Tommy Coyle and his history with the Sun? How was it a dig at Liverpool? I don't know. You tell me. I'm in the dark here. I don't really understand what's going on. But whatever the case may be, Ohara Davies has found himself in very, very hot water here. Davies, long ago, in fact, very early on in his career, when he first signed with Matchroom, Eddie Hearn told him that he's going to need to do something to stand out, that he's going to need to dye his hair blonde and do all kinds of crazy stuff in order to stand out, because Ohara Davies didn't have a stellar amateur career. He had very few amateur fights. So in order to differentiate himself from the, dozens or hundreds of other professional boxers out there as prospects in the UK, he would have to do something controversial, maybe something to get people talking. And Ohara Davies did exactly that. He went out and dyed his hair blonde, and Eddie Hearn said, "I was only joking, Ohara." But Ohara actually did the things that Hearn suggested, and then some. And Ohara quickly realized that what he was doing was working, and people were talking about him. When he started talking trash and being very extrovert and flamboyant, it got people watching him. And whether you love Ohara Davies or hate Ohara Davies, if he wasn't as outspoken, if he wasn't as extrovert, and if he didn't talk as much trash and offend so many people, he wouldn't have made the money that he's made. Ohara Davies, this year, 2017, has made over 6 figures. Now, for a fighter with such little experience, who's only fought, he's a light welterweight, he's only really fought at European level. Certainly prior to taking on Josh Taylor, you could say Josh Taylor's kind of world level now, at least fringe world level. But prior to taking on Josh Taylor, Ohara had only fought at European level. So to be making that kind of money with such little experience, 6 figures, that's remarkable. He got paid more than Josh Taylor for that fight. Now, you can say you hate Ohara Davies and you don't like his trash talk. Fact of the matter is, if he hadn't been a trash talker, if he'd been someone who kept his mouth shut and behaved the way you want him to behave, he wouldn't have earned 6 figures this year. So you can't expect Ohara Davies to stop trash talking, because that's what got him paid. He probably wouldn't have even got the Josh Taylor fight. Never mind getting that kind of payday. He probably wouldn't have got that fight at all. Maybe he'd still be undefeated, but he'd be a hell of a lot less well off financially. So this is the situation Ohara Davies is in, is that his mouth has got him some nice paydays, but now it's becoming a bit of a curse. It's like a gift and a curse, like a double-edged sword. The very thing which has got him the paydays could also lose him the paydays. Well, it's obviously lost him one payday. He's been pulled from this Matchroom show in February. Again, I can't really give my take on what Ohara has said, because I don't really understand the connection between what he said and Hillsborough directly. Maybe there was some other messages or tweets or whatever that he put out which I didn't see. I don't know. But I can't really comment on that for now. But what I can say is, just in general, one of the things which I always advise fighters against is engaging with fans who don't like them on social media. Nothing good will come from it. Every time I've seen fighters engage constantly with fans, haters, and what have you on social media, it normally is to their detriment. Amir Khan was somebody who, maybe not so much now, but in years gone by, he would take things people said on social media to heart. he was very easy. He was a person who was very easy to get under his skin, and he'd go into the ring and fight with a chip on his shoulder because of things that he'd read on social media. So it was negatively affecting his performances. Ohara Davies has fallen into this trap of, I can't remember who it was now in history who said that what you fight is what you become. Maybe one of you wiser heads out there can tell me who that quote is from. But what you fight is what you become. And when you're on social media, even on YouTube, and you're constantly going back and forth with trolls, a lot of people who are just, racist or just constantly negative towards you no matter what, you can get dragged down to their level where you start becoming like them. You start behaving like them. You get dragged down to their gutter level of behavior. This is what happens. This is why when I see people just saying ridiculous, vicious things about me on social media, I don't reply. I don't engage with them. I just block them and delete their comments. And this is why I would advise anybody, not just boxers or, public figures to do, is don't feed the trolls. It only makes them bigger, and you get dragged down to their level and you end up becoming like them. You end up having the same kind of attitude and the same kind of toxic personality that they have. And as I say, this is what seems to be happening to Ohara Davies. I mean, just look at when he was going up there to Liverpool and he was in the press conference arguing with the fans. I know David Hay did it to a lesser degree, but this is not something new with Ohara Davies. This has been a constant reoccurring theme where not just Liverpool, but, the fans of many other fighters from other cities, Ohara Davies has been going back and forth with them on social media, at press conferences, etc., etc. And I just don't think it's a good look. I think Ohara, cool, carry on with the trash talk, but limit the trash talk to addressing fighters directly. When he starts constantly going back and forth with the fans, the stuff he says starts becoming more and more extreme and more distasteful. Even when he's talking to fighters now, because when he's talking to fighters, he's not just really talking to the fighter, he's also talking to their fans. And I would advise just cut the whole fan business out. Don't try and engage with fans who don't like you. Don't do it. Don't do it. Talk to the fighters. Don't engage with fans who hate you. Nothing good will come from it. They're never going to like you. You're not going to be able to put out a tweet or something that's now going to make all these fans who hate you and they're, throwing vile racist abuse and talking about they want you to die and all that kind of thing. You're not going to get those kind of people to like you. So why engage with them at all? You understand what I'm saying? But I guess Ohara is a young, immature guy, and that's what he's decided to do, Now, as far as what he's going to do from here on in, because he's apparently having his contract with Eddie Hearn reviewed, Matchroom are reviewing his contract. This is another thing they're apparently saying. And his management and trainers dropped him and whatever. As far as where he goes from here, maybe he'll have to go abroad to the United States. I know he's been to the United States sparring before. And he is kind of a confident character that will go out there and take himself out of his comfort zone and do whatever he has to do. Maybe that's the solution. Go to the United States. It'll be more difficult there. Let's say Matchroom drop him. It'll be more difficult for him to make a name for himself out there. It'll be more difficult for him to get paydays out there. Because there's a lot more fighters out there. There are a lot of quality fighters there. And they don't really have the buzzing domestic scene in the United States that they have in the UK. In the UK, you can get decent paydays at domestic level. At British level, you can get decent paydays. There are fighters in the UK who get paid way more for British title fights than guys who are on the undercard of Mayweather fights. I'm not joking. Right? That's how bad it is in the United States when it comes to domestic level boxing in the States. Fighters who fight for regional titles and stuff like that. These people are getting paid no money. And they're not getting talked about. You know, in America, anything below world level boxing is not lucrative at all. You know, a lot of guys, especially ones who are not with major promoters in the States, when they're below world level, a lot of these guys have got day jobs. You look at, what's the guy called now? Joe Smith, the light heavyweight contender. You got a day job. That's not uncommon for people, for fighters in the US who are below world level. I know there are some fighters in the UK also have day jobs, but you know, Ohara Davies is a good example of somebody who has been domestic level, European level, and he's been earning very good money for that level of fighter. And that's because of the culture, the boxing culture that exists in the UK, where there's a lot of rivalry, like intercity rivalry and what have you. And that allows for fighters to make decent money, even at domestic level. In the United States, they don't have that. So he could go there, he could fight, but the paydays are not going to be great until he gets to world level, if he makes it to world level. You know, as far as his trash talk, he's much less likely to get himself in trouble talking trash in the USA. And that goes for any fighter. The trash talking culture in America is deeply ingrained into that society. I mean, for example, you look at some of the things that boxers have said in America, racist comments, you know, people like Sergey Kovalev, Floyd Mayweather, Bernard Hopkins, and other fighters too have done things which are deemed racist, made comment. I mean, Manny Pacquiao said what he said about gays. None of these people were dropped by their promoters. None of these people were dropped by their management. None of these people got fined. You know, look at Tyson Fury, the things that he said, the amount of times he's been fined for things that he's said. David Haye, Derek Chisora, they've been fined for things that they've said. When Floyd Mayweather said the things he said about Filipino people, was he fined? No commission ever fined him. You know, when Hopkins did the things that he did, when he said no white boy will ever beat me, he wasn't fined. When he stomped on the Puerto Rican flag, he wasn't fined. You know, when Kovalev put up the monkey pictures, he wasn't fined. And nothing happens in the United States when people come out and say all these things, these controversial things. Over there, they accept it. It's not something they make a big song and dance about. I mean, in America, you get fighters who have been punched in the face at weigh-ins and nobody gets fined. I remember when Riddick Bowe hit Larry Donald at the pre-fight press conference before their fight. Now, I remember Larry Donald saying that he was going to press charges or sue Riddick Bowe. I don't think he did in the end, but that fight went ahead as normal. You know, Riddick Bowe didn't get suspended, as far as I can remember anyway, from boxing or anything like that. They're much more accepting of controversial comments, controversial behavior and what have you in the United States in general than they are in the UK. So that would suit Ohara Davies more, being there, that he could pretty much say anything and he ain't going to be fined or dropped by anyone for saying controversial things. But yeah, you don't want to be a domestic level fighter in the United States, really. If you have a choice between being domestic level in the UK or domestic level in the States, you'd be much better off being domestic level in the UK. Much better off. So I don't know what Davies is going to do. Interesting that Sonny Edwards, who's a Frank Warren fighter, has come out kind of semi in support of Ohara Davies. You know, he did say, I'll read out Sonny Edwards' tweet. He said, Ohara Davies has now been dropped by trainer Tony and manager Charlie Sims. This is a fully fledged witch hunt, and although I'm disgusted by what was insinuated in those tweets, I can't help but feel for the man. Wonder what's next for OD. This is what Sonny Edwards said. I don't know if he's a friend of Ohara Davies. Is he trained by the Sims guys as well? No, I think Sonny Edwards is like from South London, isn't he? Sonny Edwards. He's one of the lighter weight guys, like a bantamweight or a flyweight or something. I'm not sure what his relationship is with OD, whether he's a friend or whatever, I don't know. But he is a Frank Warren guy. So would it be possible if Ohara gets dropped by Eddie Hearn that Frank Warren would take Ohara Davies on? I don't know. Frank Warren is very old school. He very much has his mindset in the old school British culture, if that makes sense. If anyone would be more likely to not take offense to Ohara potentially insulting Hillsborough victims, it would be Eddie Hearn. Because he's much more money. And, I don't think he would be as concerned about certain principles as someone like Frank Warren. Not to say that Frank Warren is necessarily a good guy or a morally better guy than Eddie Hearn. I certainly don't think he is. But just because of how old Frank Warren, old school Frank Warren is, I think he's more likely to take offense to what was apparently insinuated by Ohara Davies than Eddie Hearn would be. That's just my personal take on it, And Frank Warren's stable is becoming a lot stronger now. So a couple of years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, Frank Warren, I think, maybe would have taken on Ohara Davies after a controversy like this. But now that he's in a position where he doesn't need so many fighters as he once did, I think he'd be less likely to maybe bite the bullet and take an Ohara Davies on. So we'll see what happens and where he goes. I know there's a lot of people out there who hate Ohara Davies for whatever reason. Cool. Hate who you want to hate. But I always tell people, don't allow your hate for someone to cloud your judgment. There are plenty of fighters who I don't care for as human beings. I think they're scumbags, certain fighters, as human beings. But I don't allow that to cloud my judgment of how good they are as fighters. But a lot of people do that. Certainly with Ohara Davies. I'm telling you now, Ohara Davies, unless it all goes very, very wrong for him in terms of promotion and management, I believe Ohara Davies is going to become a world champion at some stage in his career. People want to say he's rubbish, he's garbage, he's domestic level, all this kind of stuff. These are people who hate him personally. Anyone who can look at Ohara Davies objectively, who has a decent knowledge of boxing, in my view, they're going to look at him and say, well, yeah, this guy's got potential to actually be a world champion. I think he has. I think Ohara Davies will win a world title belt at some stage in his career. And, again, there's a lot of people out there who were so happy when Josh Taylor beat him. But when you put down Ohara, forget about his character. When you put him down as a fighter, you're actually degrading Josh Taylor's win. You say he's rubbish and he's domestic level and he's a hype job. So what are you celebrating when Josh Taylor beat him for then? Why are you celebrating? Well, Josh Taylor beat a hype job. Big deal. I don't see it that way. I see it as Josh Taylor beating an unbeaten, big punching, dangerous fighter in Ohara Davies. That's who Josh Taylor beat. And that's actually a very good win for Josh Taylor. That bolsters Josh Taylor's resume in my eyes. I don't see it as him beating some bum and hype job. No, I see it him as beating an unbeaten guy who was hungry and who was dangerous and who was a very big puncher. And in his very next fight, Ohara Davies took on, I forget the guy's name now, the guy from Liverpool that he took on in his last fight, and he wiped him out. at domestic level. You know, so the Ohara Davies is a dangerous puncher. Even Josh Taylor himself after the fight said, Ohara Davies, he's heavy-handed. You know, I had to be careful because he is actually heavy-handed, to be fair. Even he gave him, enough respect as a fighter, maybe not as a person, but as a fighter, he said, yeah, he was dangerous. He's a heavy-handed guy. He's dangerous in there. And yeah, I believe Ohara Davies, as long as it don't go totally pear-shaped, management and promotion-wise, I think he will win a world title. With people, that's going to upset a lot of people. It is what it is. I'm just looking at the situation objectively. And what I see from Ohara is someone who can pick up a world title. The 140-pound division, now that Crawford has moved up, is not a particularly strong division. You know, there are plenty of belts out there now for people to fight for. 4 belts. I don't see why Ohara at some stage, he's a young guy, Ohara Davies. What is he, 24, 25? He'll pick up a belt at some stage. I think so. Yeah. So, anyway, a long video about this Ohara situation. Let me know what you feel in the comment section below. And genuinely, if any of you know what the connection is between what Ohara said and the whole Hillsborough situation, the Hillsborough issue, let me know, explain it to me, because I can't piece together where O'Hara's social media posts were linked to Hillsborough. I thought it was to do with Tommy Coyle and the fact that Tommy Coyle has got a bad relationship with the Sun newspaper. Where does the Hillsborough thing come into it? I don't know. You guys explain it to me in the comment section below. Give me links if need be, alright? Let me know how you feel, people. It's Hatman, I'm out.